perceptron. In that case, we had a few layers, but in each layer we had some, let's say, neurons. The concept here is similar, but more focused on structured data and more focused on actually imaging. We talk about some of the operations that this kind of networks cover, convolutional operations. You are already familiar with activation function, but just go through it quickly. Pooling layers, batch normalization at the end will cover transfer learning. I'll try to cover these basic concepts in about 30 minutes and work on the code base for the rest of the time. We go through one application using real images. We want to build a classifier, and hopefully we'll be, by the end of the session, we'll be able to build our own classifier. Using let's say you have your data set, you are going to build the image classifier for that. Hopefully this session will fully prepare you for that. Okay, first of all, why we need another kind of networks, convolutional neural networks or CNN? Why we can't use multilayer perceptron, or as perhaps sometimes we refer to them, fully connected networks? A few challenge occurs when you have a really large input. Just remember, an image of size 1,000 by 1,000 has about 1,000,000 pixels, and if you represent a pixel with 3, let's say, values, this will be 3,000,000 input. For such a large input size, fully connected networks are not a good choice. It is really difficult to train them. You don't have usually enough data to train those kind of images. With a small images, maybe if you have, let's say, 50 by 50 images, yes, that's approachable. But for real size images, no, that's not doable. Another thing is that in multilayer perceptron, some characteristic of images are completely ignored. For example, we have a spatial structure in images. That one completely ignored by multilayer perceptron. And also, we know that images, pixels that are close to each other usually share the same or similar color or some information. They might belong to one specific component of the image. Besides, we have some hierarchical features. For example, a car, if you look at it, has several components. Let's say wheels, you have perhaps a body of mainly same color, you have some windows, doors, stuff like that. And if we want to actually build this, a model that actually can easily learn these concepts and can reuse this hierarchy of features for different things, yeah? That would be also impossible with multilayer perceptrons, at least considering the spatial structure of the data. Okay. And another thing is that we want these images to be, for example, if I want to classify an image, this image might be a specific kind of flower. Doesn't matter if flower is in the center of image, in the left side, right side, the model should be able to identify it for me. So that's another component that fully connected networks or multilayer perceptron are not prepared for. Okay, so I mentioned some of these. There are other reasons that we can actually, CNN are better for visual data. First, they can handle high dimension images, which is impractical for a fully connected network or multilayer perceptron. They use the local connectivity between pixels. So neighboring pixels perhaps share the same attributes. And also they use something we refer to as parameter sharing. We'll see what parameter sharing is. In general, for multilayer perceptron, you rely on every input to make a prediction in each neuron. However, if I am interested to build something that, let's say, a magic feature that identify or detect flower. So if I can share the parameter for this and be able to apply this filter, let's call it filter, to every corner of the image and be able to identify the object or flower at every corner, no matter where it is, that would be valuable instead of learning a specific neuron for every corner of the image. That might be very impractical, actually. I talked about hierarchical feature learning and translation invariance, which, as I mentioned, is referred to the place or location of these images doesn't matter. This object doesn't matter for me. Okay, so let's focus more on CNNs and how they are actually built, how they are different from multilayer perceptrons. The first category of operation that I want to talk about is convolutional operations. One characteristic that I'm looking to and I am hoping to get is to be able to apply some, let's say, call it neurons or some function or filter that I can, let's say, slide it over the whole image and identify the object of interest or some feature from that object of interest, regardless of the place. So if I have something, I can slide it over the whole image, and that's filter job might be actually just identifying some specific patterns per flower. That would be great because I don't need to create, I can use one of those filters or one of those neurons and apply it to the whole image and gain that result. So perhaps that filter is a small or that neuron is a small. It has a few parameters to learn. So that's the more always have this in mind. The more parameter we need to optimize or learn, the more data we need to have and more computation usually. Okay, how to do this? Convolution operation actually is very simple, very straightforward. It is, you can, we go through some examples, but really it's an element-wise production between element of a filter and the image or part of the image, which is under this filter at any moment. And the result will be a output. When you move this filter around over the whole image, actually we create a feature map. A feature map which has 2 dimensions. Let's see what actually this is. So here, if you look at the blue part, this is the image, yeah? And the navy one, which is moving, is the filter. Here I have a 3x3 filter that I slided over the whole image. And each time, at each position, it has one output that's created. By sliding, actually, I create another. By sliding over the whole image, I create a 2D output. We call that a feature map. How to build it in PyTorch? PyTorch offer a conv2D from NNN module, which is a part of PyTorch package. In that case, you want to say, I have, this is the input channel, yeah? The image here has 1 channel. Image could, this number might be different, yeah? It could be 3, 4, 5, or more. An output channel is actually, as I mentioned, each filter or kernel create 1 output channel. So if I want to have 100 filter, I can just say output channel equal to 100. And kernel size is the size of the navy part. Here is 3x3, so I just use 3. Okay, so that's straightforward. But I see one pattern. The size of this output, the dimension of output is smaller than input. Sometimes it's not a desirable thing. The input is a 4x4 grid. The output is a 2x2 grid. So let's see if we can adjust for that. One solution actually to fix that is to create a padding. Padding is an area usually around the image. We fill that with 0 values. And it is similar to having an image with a border added or padded by 0 or black color. In that case, if I increase the size, this padding, I can actually make sure that I can control the size of the output. How to implement it? The same conv2d has a padding parameter that you can set. If you don't set it, by default padding is 0. Here we use padding of 2. So let me see if I have any questions so far.
There's kind of one question asking if these boxes are pixels.
Can you repeat your question again? Sorry.
It is asking if the boxes are equivalent to pixels.
Okay. So unfortunately, your voice is not perhaps, or I have the issue with hearing you very well.
Sorry, it's probably like my AirPods is just
Okay.
in an awkward position. Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, sorry. They're asking if the boxes are equivalent to pixels.
You can, when you start, yes. When you start, if, for example, at the beginning, this might be a grayscale image, for example. Each of them would be, in that case, 1 pixel, this blue one that you see here. But as we move forward, and we see that along the way, these boxes change their meaning. We still refer to them as image or sometimes tensor to be more accurate, which are, again, images, but in a different dimension and something that doesn't resemble what, if you visualize them, doesn't resemble what we see in an image. Yeah, it will be a different dimension. Okay. So we talked about kernel size and padding. Here, once again, here we have a kernel size of 4 by 4. You see that this moving filter is 4 by 4. Here, for the sake of simplicity, I used a kernel size of depth 1. So in channel is 1, means that depth of this is 1. But in general, if you have a RGB image, for example, in that case, you have depths of 3, R for red, G for green, and B for blue. In that case, you need to have a depth of 3. So input channel will be 3, or at the middle of the process, because really we can apply this convolution operator to any input regardless of their depths. In that case, it could be a different value, and we see some of them. Okay. Hopefully, I've answered your question.
Oh yeah. There is also one more question, two more actually. Does the kernel go over all 3 channels in the case of RGB, or is it different channel kernel per channel?
So in general, if you look at a RGB image as really a 3D matrix, yeah? For example, if I have 100 by 100 pixel, 100 height, 100 to be a width, in that case, I have 100 by 100, and I have 3 pixel, yeah? This means that it is 3D input. It is 100 times 100 times 3. And in that case, let's say the depth of this blue region would be 3. This means that you have really a stack of 3 layers on top of each other. But this filter also has a depth of 3. This means that at each point, when you slide this kernel or filter, it sees not only the top one, the middle one, the third one as well, because it has a depth. This one, in that case, or filter will be 3 by 3 by 3. So it is also a volume. We have a volume as an input and also a volume as a filter. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Lucky. There's one more question, sorry.
No worries.
They're asking, what is the purpose of using a CNN? Because from what they understand is, even though we reduce the tensor size, like in this case, 9 by 9 to 6 by 6, we still need to do more calculation.
I don't say it needs more calculation. It needs the same amount of calculation, but the magic happens in parameter sharing. Remember, this filter is a single filter, yeah? And I slide over the whole image instead of having one set of parameter here, one set here, one set here, what's actually fully connected does. So the magic happens in the parameter sharing parts. And that makes sense. For example, if you have a feature that wants to predict, let's say, flower color or texture, that filter, you can slide it over the whole image and it can predict that feature regardless of the place in the image, because we actually filter it or slide this filter over the whole image. I sometimes refer to filter or sometimes refer to kernel. These two are the same concept, filter or kernel. So if I say kernel size or filter size is 3, both are the same. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Malaki. There is one follow-up question asking, wouldn't a randomly selected filter be better in order to save time?
So we start with by randomly selected, you means the values, yeah, the values, because we have a multiplication of elements associated with this moving filter, and every pixel value which is beneath it, yeah, under it. So in that case, we start always with a random value assigned to these filter, but we try to learn them. What is the best value? That's the training part. If you are talking about the position of the kernel, no, we can't go with just random value because we need to check for the whole image, yeah? And remember, we want to create the same dimension, yeah? We can, here the input is here is a matrix, a 2D, we want to create a 2D as well. We don't want to have one value here, one value here, a sparse matrix. Okay.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned, we can slide the kernel over the image, but so far we slide it one step at a time, but we can do it actually more than one step. Here, we slide it each time to move to a step, or a stride is 2. You see that instead of going one step, it just jumps over one and moves to the second one. This is a concept, we call it a stride. It is helpful, more specific, when we want to decrease the spatial dimension of the image. For example, here, the height and width of the image, we have a 5 by 5, but by making a stride 2, we make the dimension of the output's spatial dimension or height and width almost half, yeah? In some cases, that's the desired operation or desired outcome that we are going to do. Okay. Remember, when this is smaller in dimension, also you might lose some information, but the computation needed for calculating the features on top of that will be smaller. Remember, we have a sequence of these. So the input of one conv2D will be, the output of one conv2D will be the input of the next one. And we have a chain of this, as we saw this in multi-layer perceptron in previous session. Okay. Here you see a situation when we have kernel size 3 by 3. You have a stride of 2, and we have a padding of 1. So you can have a different combination of these. So when I say kernel output channel is 1, means that really I use one filter or one kernel. If I want to define 100 kernel, use 100 kernel, output channel should be 100. Yeah, I don't need another parameter here because both of them are the same. If number of output channel is 100, this means that actually I am using 100 filter. And each kernel or filter create a 2D image for you. If you want to create 100 of them and stack them, you just need to say out channel equal to 100. In that case, your model use 100 of those filters. Of course, each of them are different, initialized randomly, and then trained during the model training. Okay, are we on time? Okay. So far if you look at what we see, the filter is like one part. No missing a cell between them, but we can actually make this 3 by 3 to be dilated. In that case, it's similar to the concept that these middle rows and layers in the kernel will be assigned to 0. It has similar effect. So it gives us a chance to cover a larger area. Sometimes it is a desired actually behavior to cover a bigger corner of the image or bigger area of the image to see features that might be represented in a larger area. That's is something dilation. By default, dilation is 1. This means that each of them, the next cell in this row or column is the one after, but with no gap. When dilation is 2, means that skip the first one, go to the second one, yeah, and do this across this row. So this is a dilation. If you see, you can actually use the same conv2d and show that behavior by dilation equal to 2. So remember, dilation by default is 1. So if you don't provide anything, it is 1. Padding by default is 0. So for example, if I don't have anything here, is the same behavior. A stride here is 1, but a stride also can be combined with dilation and different dilation and padding. Okay. So far I have used conv2d with different variation. Sometimes I have a special dimension, height, and width that are small, and I want to expand it. For some architecture, I need to do this. In that case, I need to have a different operation. Conv transpose 2D actually give me this. And the behavior is similar to convolution, but in that case, you have some dilation on the input image or input tensor. You also can have padding as well. So this is how to implement this behavior. So remember, the input dimension is 2 by 2, and here my output is 5 by 5. Okay, once again, the inputs here, just for the sake of simplicity of representation or presenting, they are both inputs. Input is one channel, but it can be, it can have this one could be 10 channel or 5 channel or 100 channel or 1,000 deep. Yeah. In that case, our filter has the same depths as well, or kernel has the same depths. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so in the previous session, you went through activation function. Activation function actually give us some sort of nonlinearity. Remember, without activation function, we have a bunch of linear functions on top of each other, and combination of linear function will result in a linear function. So if we don't use a activation function, in that case, we are only limited to linear functions or linear concept. And as nothing is linear almost when it goes to imaging and more complex tasks, such a network will be very limited in their capability. So this nonlinearity actually gives the models a lot of power to represent and learn very complex nonlinear functions or concepts. ReLU, sigmoid, and tanh are the most common one, but ReLU, of course, being very efficient, and it has benefits. That's, for example, sigmoid has some downside, which lead to vanishing gradients. I don't want to go through details, but it might be a good idea if you, I think it has been covered in the previous session, but read about vanishing gradient and how it might affect the behavior of the model. In general, when gradients are leading the model to update the parameter. If the gradient vanishes, means that you don't have any guidance how to update the model, and training will stop. No improvement in the model. So we don't want to see vanishing gradient. ReLU is very helpful for that. Okay. We have another component that is another operation that is very helpful. Sometimes we want to decrease a spatial dimension. One way so far was to use strides bigger than 2. We also have max pooling and average pooling. In that case, really, max pooling and average pooling show the same behavior. There is a difference between max pooling and average pooling versus using convolution with the stride 2. Max pooling and average pooling are 2 operators that they don't have any parameter. So they are parameterless. This means that the model does not need to learn anything. So both of them reduce the spatial dimension of the feature map. And feature map could be an input or output. We reduce so when I have a feature map, which is the input, remember at the beginning, that feature map is the original image that you feed to the model. The model creates a stack of layers, depends on how many output actually channel you have. And that's, you can call it an output feature map. So as I mentioned, these two don't have any parameters. So if you use them, in general, your network has less parameter to learn. A less parameter to learn means that the model has less complexity. Less complexity has one upside, one downside. The downside is that it's easier to learn something with a smaller number of parameters. And downside is sometimes if you decrease the number of parameters too much, too quick, your model might not have enough capability for learning complex topics or complex concepts. Okay. Both these help with translation invariance. And I show one in the next slide. I show how really they work. And you can use either in many cases. So usually practically people try max pooling or average pooling and see which one is the best. In most cases, people use max pooling though, because it increased a stronger signal. Okay. Okay. So let's go through this slide. You see, this is a max pooling operator. Really, each time when you slide it, this max pooling, look at all of these values and pick the maximum one and move it to the output channel. And you see that max pooling, for example, if the kernel size is 2 by 2, decrease the spatial dimension by half. So that's in a nutshell how max pooling works. Very straightforward, no parameter associated with. And you can implement it by n.maxpool2d, and this is the kernel size that you assign. Okay. I want to give this as activity. I'm not sure if this was covered in the previous session, but batch normalization is another operator that's improved training by normalizing the inputs distribution. It helped with internal covariate shift and also increase the training speed. So this is an activity I like you guys to go through it perhaps after the session for the sake of time. And also I want to have most of the time focused on the notebook. Okay, so that's some activity. I leave it for you. How to build a network. In general, we have inputs, let's say input layers. That depends on the concept that you are using. It might has, if you have an RGB image, you have 3 inputs channel. And then you have a stack of different convolution layer. So these different convolution layers, one after another is applied. A common pattern is that as we move deeper, we increase the depth number of channel usually, but we decrease the spatial dimension. This make your model more efficient because remember, we need to slide the filter. So when you make the spatial dimension, the area that we need to slide over will be smaller. So that's also increased the efficiency. But at the end of the day, after creating this last feature map, we need to find out, let's say it's a classification. Yeah, we need to find out this object or this image is showing, let's say, flower type 1, flower type 2, or type 3, or whatever. Yeah, so at the end, it should be assigned to a vector. What we do is usually we use a shallow classifier, usually 1 layer or 2 layer, a fully connected component, similar to what you saw in the previous session. You saw a multi-layer perceptron. We usually use 1 to 2 layer because these are a very expensive number of parameters. Here is huge. And the job of this is to convert that, let's say, 2D filter map, flatten it, and also go through it, combine these features, and give us the probability of each class. So here, if you have, let's say, if you have 102 class, you need a vector of 102 values, and each of them should represent the probability of the corresponding class. So for example, the element at position 0 should show us the probability of a class 0. Okay. Any questions so far?
None so far.
Okay, perfect. And now that we are here, I can actually go through the notebook at this point. Okay. Can you see the notebook?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Please take your time to download the notebook. And when you have the notebook, so I give you guys a couple of minutes to download the notebook in a place on your machine for now. Or actually, it is on Google Drive. So if you click on it, it goes to, you have option to download it, or if you have earlier used Colab, you can open it to its Google Colab. Yeah. So if I click on that, oops, I can't do that because perhaps. Yeah, my system is frozen, so let's see what we can get here. Okay. Okay. And we might need to actually close this window. Hopefully that would be no. Okay. Okay, let me stop the sharing for a moment. It might be, yeah, it is Zoom colliding with the, okay. Then let's share back. So for you, if you click on it, you can, see, hopefully you see the notebook now, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So one pattern that we have in general for learning is that we learn a concept and extend it as we go forward on other tasks as well. So for example, if you learn, let's say, how to paint, let's say, a human, perhaps it makes it easier for you to learn how to paint other objects as well, or animal. So this features or skills or knowledge gained from a task might be transferable to another task. We want to see if we can use this to actually transfer a model trained on a given task to another one. So this concept is called transfer learning. Here I want to use this concept of transfer learning to transfer a already learned model to a task. The task that I am using here is a flower flower classification. I have 102 class for this task. To do that, I need to let's say run each of these. You can click on each items and shift enter perhaps, or something, depends on your operating system. It could run this cell for you. I have some imports. As I mentioned, convolution operator usually come from NN. We have some other component that you have seen in the previous session. So those are utility. Here we use torch vision as well, because we use one of the data sets, as well as we also use a model that already exists on torch vision under models. And augmentation also is a augmentation package that we'll be using. Okay, so I run this. Yeah, okay. It seems that I have run out of my capacity for Google Colab. This means that I'll be running the model on CPU, which is slower than what you will experience. Make sure that when you have a model, you want to train it, make sure that you are on GPU. You see that there are A100 and V100. Those are paid options that you can use, but you should pay for it. Yeah. And remember, when you get it, also you might have a monthly subscription. It has also capacity used per month. Have that in mind as well. Okay, I just run them. I assign a few constants. It's a good practice to define all of your constants early in your code for the sake of visibility. Here I use a mean and a standard deviation because I want to normalize my input images. And these are, you can find out what is the mean and standard deviation of your image data set for any image you have. Remember, these are your images usually between 0 and 255. These values are between 0 and 1. So this means that your input image should first be divided to 255 and then calculate mean per channel. So this is the average of red, this is the average of green, and this is the average of blue channel. And you can do the same thing for standard deviation, height, and width. I go 256 by 256. Batch size is a component that we don't want to process the whole data set at once because it's impractical for large data sets. You don't have enough memory to load everything at the same time. And also you don't want to do it one per time because that would be a little bit noisy, as you have just one example and you need to make a decision and update the gradient based on that one example. So here I use 32. I trained the model for 10 epoch, but I want you, just for the sake of time, I want you to run this model for, let's say, a larger one, 20, 50, something like that, and see how the performance of the model change. And also I save the model, the best model, because remember, down the road, you want to use the best model. Yeah, you want to load it and make prediction. So I save this best model for future use if I need it. The first step is image augmentation. So what is image augmentation and why I use image augmentation? Okay, I want to hear from you. Please feel free to share your insight from the chats within the chat. So there are two words, image and augmentation. Yeah, something which we apply for image and also to augment the image. So let me give you one example. If I have let's say I have a classifier that want to detect cats and dogs, yeah? Do you agree that if I rotate this image a little bit, still, if at the starting point, the image is image of a cat, rotating it doesn't change the image. It still is a cat, yeah? However, when you rotate it, the model see a slightly different image. Okay, I think we have a hands up. Go ahead.
So I just want to like answer
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
question
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah,
So basically, I'm understanding that image augmentation allow us to kind of increase the range of data that we have, but we don't need to have more data. We just kind of flip and provide different view to the image to the machine so that it can learn the image differently every time. For
that's
example, we can
yeah.
resize or zoom in or zoom out. Uh, so it's also increase the accuracy in practical way, like in real life. We don't have the same angle or picture every time we give the machine.
True. That's correct. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I was actually looking for. So as your friend suggested, if we rotate the image or flip the image, it still is the same object. Yeah. So really the same label. If it was a cat, it still is a cat, but the image has been flipped or has been rotated. Or you can have other changes, zoom in, zoom out, or add noise. For example, adding a noise to image of cat, as long as the noise is not too much to completely erase or destroy the signal, a noisy image of a cat. The model actually, it sometimes is helpful actually for these augmentation. Why? Because it's give you opportunity, or your model the opportunity to be able to work with noisy images or images when the initial image might be upside down. Yeah. People save images and some of those images might be rotated willingly or by mistakes. You have an image which is completely upside down or flipped or whatever. So these augmentation help you to increase the diversity of your data and artificially increase the sample size. Yeah, in that case, you also they might be very similar, your images, but when the model, when those features are extracted, the model see a slightly different tensor input. So that's also a good help the model to actually be more robust and more generalizable. This means that you can get a higher performance from your model by applying image augmentation. Here I have a simple class. This is usually you don't need it, but since here I want to use a data set which is internal in a data set which is internal to Torch Vision, and at the same time I want to use augmentation as my augmentation pipeline. I write this one. The functionality is very straightforward. Originally, PyTorch or Torch Vision has a transform augmentation. That transform augmentation works a little bit different from augmentation. Augmentation requires you to give a name parameter, which is image equal to something, yeah, which is not the way that's Torch transform works. We just do this, and the output of the augmentation is a dictionary, which is a little bit different from what we have for the transform from Torch Vision. So really what we do here in this call function, we make them compatible, yeah? In that case, if an image is given, the image will be transformed and the image will be returned instead of a dictionary to be returned. So this is something which is required for this use case. Feel free to run these along the way. After that, I create the augmentation pipeline. When I say augmentation pipeline, because it is a subset of, actually it's a set of or sequence of augmentation. A image, go through them one by one. So your image will be applied first, a flip, and then a rotate, and then a color jitter or other things. Channel shuffle, RGB shift, hue saturation, stuff like that. One thing which is important is to know that I don't want my images to go through all of these one by one. Why? For several reasons. One, if you apply all of these operations, all of them, to the same image, perhaps you might lose the signal. The output image might be very different. The other point is that I want to create the maximum diversity. How to achieve that? For example, I want to flip the image once, but for other image, I don't flip it. Or this is why you see a probability of application. This means that 50% of the time, this flip will be applied to images 50% of time. In the other 50%, the image directly go to rotation. 50% of my images will be rotated, and the range of rotation is between -15 to 15. So there are other parameters that you can think of. And the same thing you see here, color jitter, change the color to some extent, a probability of 50% again. Here I have channel shuffle, 20% probability of applying, and I have others with different probability here. Some operation I want to always be applied. So I say always apply equal to true. That's, for example, resizing the image to a given heights and widths, and normalization by default will be always applied, and to tensor by default, to tensor V2 by default will be always applied. So remember, for some of them might be straightforward, like flip. Yeah, I want to have maximum variability, and maximum variability happens, let's say, for if I have the flip sometimes applied and sometimes not applied. This goes 50-50, for example. For others, for example, here, why I went with channel shuffle to be 0.2, it's just a choice. You might go at 0.25 and get a slightly better result, or if you go at 0.15, you get a slightly better result. But the more a feature is, the stronger the transformation is, the probability should be smaller. So if you have something that changed for example, to gray, make the image grayscale. So I want to just 20% of my images to be grayscale, because most images are RGB. Yeah? I want the model to work well for RGBs. So this is a pipeline. This pipeline is I would say, arts and science together. Always define a pipeline that does not destroy the signal. You can go as extensive as possible, but make sure that you visualize your result and you see something that the signal is not missing. Any questions so far? Okay. So this pipeline that I had was for chain. So a chain transform, I call it chain transform. I have another one, which is valid transform as well. For validation, I don't want to create maximum variability, actually. I want to keep the data as similar as real data without any changes. Remember, training data are used for model training. Train transform are used for applying to training data, but when I validate my data, still I need to transform it. Why I need to transform the data? Any guess?
Rashad is guessing that so that any orientation gives the correct
Not slightly, yeah. Yes, Daniel, that's correct. It should be this, yeah, we want to make them the same dimension. And also if, for example, here I resize everything to the same height and width, because these will be input to the model, and I want to have consistent sizing. Otherwise, the model can't. The model does not work, and you get an error during the. You remember, we want to give the model a batch of inputs, and when they are not the same shape, you cannot stack them. Besides, I want all of the input to be normalized. Remember, I defined this mean and standard deviation as at the beginning of the notebook, and I want to convert everything to a tensor. Okay, so we are done with the transformation that we created. Now it's time to, oops. Yeah, I didn't run this one. Yes, that's why. Okay, make sure that we run everything along the way. Okay. Now I want to create my data set. I use a data set from Torch Vision data sets that contains some data set there. I use Flower 102, but for many of your application, you want to use your own data, so you don't want to use a standard data. So here is for the sake of the class, and since I don't want you to download data, upload data, those tasks, it takes time, we use the this original data set. If you want to use your own data set, you can go through this link to learn how to use custom data set, or in one single line, actually, you can create using image folder as a data set that you need to just give the address of the folder. Each images for each class should be in one nested folder. So I have, let's say, I call it image dataset as the root folder. And inside that, I have one class, let's say I use the number, the name of the folder should be, for example, 0, and all of the images for flower of class 0 will be in that folder. And again, under the root, which was, let's say, we had call it image data set or something like that. We create 102 folder. Each of them contains their own examples from that class. So that's how you actually can create your own data set just with one line. Custom data set is also flexible. It's straightforward. It's a little bit, it gives you more flexibility, but you need to write a few lines of code. So in this case, this data set Flower 102 has a simple way to extract it from the data sets. You need to say which split you want to get. And so, for example, here I go with, sorry, this should be train, I guess. Train. Let's see, check this one, documentation. Or, okay, I think I can. Interesting when I have Zoom working. Use that. Okay. If you are not sure about something, go with that and say PyTorch documentation. Okay, Flower 2. And you see that you have, by default, this is train. You have this data set is in 3 batch. The train, validation, and test. So let me fix this. Okay. So this one should be train, validation, and test, something like that. And we go with, it takes some time to download it for you guys. If this is the first time you are getting that, it goes through them first, one by one, download them. I mentioned that this is 3 batches, training, validation, and test. Okay, the data set is downloaded. Now let's visualize a few of these. This code block really doesn't do some magical thing. It just goes through a few of these images and try to visualize them in a grid. I assume you are familiar with Matplotlib and how visualize one image. If not, please go through this code on your own. And if you have any question regarding these concepts, feel free to join or TA sessions. Okay, let's say I want to show 3 rows and 4 columns of these images. This is from training data sets. You see this? Always represent your data. To make sure that your data is loaded properly, to make sure that you have these images assigned to right class, and to make sure that your data augmentation does not destroy the images. Yeah. Okay, now I have that. I do the same thing for validation data sets as well. Okay, the last one was test data set as well. Remember, we had validation test. So we have 3 data sets. Let me visualize something for test as well. Yeah, this is our this is valid data set. And this one. Okay, do I have this? Okay, should be test. Yeah, it's on. Yeah. So you want to see consistency, yeah? You want to see consistent images. Okay, now that we have that component, we can start with transfer learning process. Let me see if I can go back to the previous slide. No, apparently Zoom doesn't allow me to do that. Let's see, I can open the notebook here. Doesn't seem to be like that. Anyway, in the slide I showed you that one CNN classifier has two components. One feature extractor that was a sequence of convolution and other operators. And also I said that there you can have a shallow multi-layer perceptron, usually 1 layer or 2 layer. There are a few approaches when we use a pre-trained model. So when we want to apply transfer learning, one way is to freeze the feature extractor and learn the classifier, the multi-layer perceptron, or a shallow classifier. So I refer to them from now on as feature extractor and classifier. And by classifier, I mean the shallow multi-layer perceptron, usually 1 layer or 2 layer. So first of all, these images that this model that I am using are, first of all, the model that we are using today is ResNet 50. ResNet is a famous model, which 50 means number of trainable layers. Here we have 50 trainable layers, and this is actually available from torchvision.models. There are a relatively large number of common model architectures that are available. You can use them. Feel free to try different model architecture and see how they work. And you can compare them. Okay. One way, as I mentioned, is to freeze the feature extractor. And by freezing, we say that I don't want to change the feature extractor. Only I change the features in the classifier. So first of all, ImageNet, these ResNet model that you are using has been trained using a data set which is called ImageNet, and ImageNet has 1,000 class. So this means that the data set that we have has a classifier that classify data to any of those 1,000 classes. We have 102 class. So this means that our data set is not compatible with ImageNet. This means that we need to replace the classifier for ImageNet. That's the first thing. How to do that? Actually, it's straightforward. We'll see in a minute. So how to get this model and pre-trained weights is relatively straightforward. We go at models dot name of the model, which was ResNet 50, and this is which weight we want to get. So I use image nets 1K underline V2. V1 is there is another pre-trained version, which is V1. And I freeze the model. Remember here, when I freeze the model, I freeze the whole model, even classifier. But remember, We want to get rid of the old classifier, which is frozen at this point, and define our new classifier. Let's see how we can do that. Okay, let me run these cells. So for the first time when you have this, the model, the weights or parameter needs to be downloaded. So it takes some time. And after that, let's print the model, see what we get. Remember, we talked about different convolution operation here. And if you print the model, you see that actually there is a stack of these convolutional operators. And there are 50 of them, 50 trainable ones. You see conv2d with different values, batch norm, conv2d, batch norm, ReLU. And there are different blocks, yeah? This, for the second block, you see the same, a combination of conv, batch norm, conv, batch norm, conv, batch norm, ReLU. And this one goes all the way to this FC, which is stand for fully connected layer. This is the classifier. Here, the classifier is just a single layer. It is just a single linear layer, which was something that we saw in the previous session. We need to replace this. Remember, I said ImageNet has 1,000 class, and you see this, yeah? It has 1,000 output feature. We don't want this to be 1,000, we want to be 102 because our data set has 102. How to do that? Relatively straightforward. We actually need to define, you can either say that classifier is equal to this one line, or FC equal to this one line. It's the same thing, yeah? Everything is the same. I only change this from 1,000 to be 102. But sometimes we might want to have 2 layers, or we might have something like that. So in those cases, you put them inside a sequential. So this is why I just defined it as sequential. But you can actually, since it's 1 layer, you can just copy paste this here. Yeah, you can call it, add it here instead of this. Anyway, so I go with this one for now. Remember, this is a new classifier, which is not frozen. If I use this, I need to change the model.fc to this new classifier. And I did that. In that case, everything is frozen. This classifier is not, because it's a new one, yeah? It's a new one we created. Okay, so we have this one done. Let's see how we can train the model. Remember, I told you that when we train the model, we don't apply training for the whole data sets, because sometimes these data set might have 10,000, 100,000, and 1,000,000 or millions of samples. Of course, we don't have enough memory to load all of them at the same time. And we want to, as a solution, we want to each time load a batch of them, let's say 32 of them for in our cases. PyTorch has a data loader that actually facilitate and simplify this process for you. Each time it goes load a few sample for you. You just need to give it the name of the data set, how many sample that you want, here is batch size, and if you want to shuffle it or not. Usually we do shuffling true for train data set, and false for every for validation or test data loaders. So why we need to keep shuffle equal to true? Any guess? Feel free to raise your hand as well. So removing bias. Bias is a very general word. Overfitting. It could help with overfitting. What else? So remember, if you don't apply shuffling, it goes and pick batches from the beginning, yeah? Batch 1, and then next batch in the order. So there is, as suggested, on the chat to have a random batches. So what's wrong if we don't have random batches? What's the challenge? So it learned the pattern of sequence, yeah. And also, Joseph suggests that it will train based on the same order. I think both answers are correct, and actually two different angle of the reason why we do shuffling. Remember, if we don't do shuffling, there might be some order in data set. For example, all of the sample from class 1 are at the beginning, and then class 2 and class 3 and class 4. In that case, the model starts with learning images from class 0, for example, and everything is from class 0. So it's learned, okay, everything is class 0, predict 0. And then it moves to class 1, and all of a sudden say, okay, now everything is class 1. So actually, in that case, the model does not learn properly. That's one component. And even if there is no pattern and originally the data is shuffled, if you don't do shuffling each time that we go through the data sets, the order of samples extracted for, let's say, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3 are always the same. We don't want to see that. We want these batches each time to have a different composition, and data loader can give you that as well. So here I use data loader. Once again, the job of data loader is to go ask the data set, give me batch size images. When it gets that one, stack it and return it as one tensor. Okay. For validation and test data loader, we don't need no training, and actually it's good to not have shuffle, because we want to see some consistency there. Okay. Sometimes you might have a device, you might GPU on your machine or might not. In my case, for example, because I think I used my capacity for GPU, I cannot run the model on GPU. This line gives you a hardware agnostic way to define the device, either a CPU or if you have GPU, it will be CUDA. Yeah. So this way I can actually define the device. When I have the device, I move the model and data to that device. Make sure that when you move the data, the model to a specific device, your data also should be moved to that device. For now, I started moving the model to that device. The model here is, for me, let's see, for me, the device should be CPU. Remember, I don't have access to GPU. But you guys should see device CUDA. Okay. Okay, now that we have that, we also need to define a loss function. Loss function is a function that provides a measure of how good the result or the outcome of the model is. Remember, for classifier, we need to predict the probability of different classes. So really, it's a distribution. It's a probability distribution. Cross entropy loss is a good way to compare two probability distribution. And for this notebook, we use cross entropy loss. It is available through NN package of PyTorch, NN module of PyTorch. Okay, so I define criterion. And then when I have this loss function, I need a way to optimize. So remember, this loss function give me the loss, how good or bad the model is. And then based on that, I calculate the gradient. And when I have the gradient, I want to change or adjust the weights and biases for the model. And for that one, I need the optimizer to apply that. Optimizer has access to all model parameters, and some other component like learning rate or momentum or stuff like that. Okay. So we define that as well. Any questions so far? Okay. Then I have perhaps you have seen a pipeline, how to train a model, but I provided documentation for the code, so you can take a look. Let's go through the evaluation code. The job of this evaluation function is to evaluate the performance of the model. So it's you give the model, the data loader that give the data, the criterion and the device that you want, and also for sake of printing, I use face that either is validation or test, because that's usually the two places that I evaluate the model. So the first thing, always remember, you need to move your model to eval mode. So when you move the model to eval mode, behavior of some component of your model changes. For example, if you have a batch normalization, in that case, the batch normalization won't be in the training mode. It will be the train parameter will be used here with no training. Also, components such as we didn't talk about in this session about dropout, but dropout will be deactivated for validation. It is only for training. Dropout is one of the components that you can use as well. And here I keep track of a list for all of the prediction made by the model and also ground truths because I want to return them. This is a context manager. I define anything within the context manager of torch.nograd. Actually, what by this context manager, when you're using it, you tell PyTorch anything within this context manager should not be, you should not keep track of gradients and calculate anything for it. So which is important, efficient, and also the behavior that we want to see. We don't want to keep track of that and waste computation and resources. We start with, we want to calculate average loss and average accuracy in general, or accuracy in general. So we go with some initialization, and then we go through this data loader. If you have a data loader, you can actually go through it in a for loop. It's a data loader is a generator. Each time you ask, it's in a for loop, it goes and loads some data, give it back to you, and then next time load more data as needed. Remember, I said that we move the model to device. Also, we should do the same thing for images and labels. So this is images, move to the device, and labels the same. And the prediction is straightforward. Apply the model to images, and this output will be the prediction. When I have these outputs, I can calculate the criterion. Criterion is the function of, I need the output or the prediction for the model, as well as the labels. And some calculation, I need to keep track of total loss and total number of samples here. Images.size 0 give you actually number of images. And here is the exact prediction. Remember, we have a probability distribution. We have a vector, and the items that has the highest probability will be selected as prediction or class prediction for that one. When I have that, I calculate the accuracy, means when prediction is equal to label, that's the correct one. If it's not, it's incorrect. So I sum them up. All of the correct one will be counted as 1. All of the incorrect one will be counted as 0. This one give me the number of correct predictions, and I just add them up. At the end, I have accuracy is correct one divided by total. Loss is, or average loss is total loss divided by total number of samples. And just a simple printing just for the sake of keeping track of items. I just print accuracy and loss, and at the end I return loss, accuracy, and also ground truths and prediction lists. So relatively straightforward. Any question here? Okay. The training pipeline is almost similar, but you can guess that we should not have torch no grad. And also at some point, we should tell the model to update these weights. Yeah, we haven't done that. For prediction, we don't need to upgrade something, or we don't need to tell the model to change the weight and biases. So first, make sure that you move model back to the training mode. Yeah, that's also important. A similar concept. Let's see where this, first of all, it won't be inside a context manager, no grad context manager. We don't see a no grad context manager. Make sure that you don't have it, because here we are interested in calculating gradients. And also we want to do some, let's say, back propagation and calculates call optimizer, stuff like that. So I start with optimizer.0grad, erase the gradients. So it's a start fresh in each for each iteration of this for loop or each batch. Make the prediction, move the images and labels to the device, and then make the prediction here. Calculate the loss, but here you have two steps, which is we didn't have in the evaluation part. Loss dot backward. This is actually back propagation that happens. You just need to call loss dot backward. Yeah, dot backward will be called on loss. When you did that, next, this one gives you the gradient calculated, and then optimizer dot step. This means that, remember, optimizer had access to all of the parameters. So when you say a step, means that update the parameter for one step. The rest is the same calculation for loss and accuracy that we had, and the same message here. Here I return the, I call the, each time that I train a model, or each time that I go through the data, I evaluate the model as well. So this is actually when I call here, when I call the evaluation. I want to have both training error and also the error of the model on the validation data set. So this is why I call this on the validation data set. And similar output, yeah, I want to return. So one thing I do, however, I want to keep track of best model. So if I say if loss for this new result, if the loss is less than best loss, so results loss, this is the loss for current state of the model. If it is better, in that case, I save that model on this best model pass. So each time I get a better model, I overwrite that one. I overwrite it, and at the end, I have best model written on a file using this function in a specific pass that I select. Okay, and that's the training pipeline. Now the training could happen. You just run this cell and then next one, and you should see the model performance start little by little. The model gets better. I want you guys to start training your model. Hopefully everyone will be. Please mention if you are able to train the model and the model actually is running. Okay. Please have thumbs up or a message on the chat so I can see that you are able to run your code. Takes a little while for the first epoch to print the output for you. So the model need to go through all of the training examples and make that prediction. Okay, great. Okay, now, any questions so far? Okay, now after your model is done with, let's say we have 10 epoch, but you can change it as you wish, make it larger, number of epoch larger. You can also evaluate it on the test data set. So we use the best model first. We load the best model using torch.load. Remember, the best model pass, we set it earlier at the top of the notebook, if you remember. This was one of those constant, I guess. Yeah. This is the best model pass. It's a constant. We defined it here. So here we load it, torch.load, and this is a string. This is a pass address. Yeah. It's load the model, and this would be our best model. And when you have it, you can actually evaluate this model, but on test loader, which is test data set. And it should give you a performance, accuracy, and loss. Here, I just use accuracy and loss, but in general, it's always a good idea to have evaluate the model based on other metrics. And this is the reason, this exactly the reason is the reason why I returned ground truths and predictions for you, so you can apply other performance measures such as recall, precision, and let's say F1 score, those things that you want to test. So hopefully that gives you a bunch of measurements to use for a model evaluation. Okay, quite on time. Any question? I can perhaps stop sharing at this point. We needed to cover a lot of ground, and I understand that some of these concepts we went through it very fast. There will be definitely opportunity for you to continue working on it. Some of you might have project that is specifically image classification. Some of you might, hopefully many of you will be able to complete this phase and participate in the next phase, which would be further hands-on, actually using these concepts under a academic advisor and mentors.
All right. It looks like people are saying that they have to study the code before. I guess that's for today's session. And what we would like to, oh, there is one question. Feel free to open your mic.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the kernels.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when it's overlapping, obviously the kernel has like some numbers that are it's multiplying, and then that creates the new feature space. How are those numbers like determined? Because I understand that they're used to like extract certain features like edges, and they get more complex. And like when you're importing like these libraries, are all of the models you use all kind of extract the same different things in the same orders? Or how does that kind of work?
So remember each kernel has when we train this model, initially they are random values, yeah? The weights and biases. A kernel is a bunch of weights, agree on that, yeah?
Yeah.
So this weight at the beginning is usually somehow random, but as training as we go through training, we actually learn those weights. What is the weights or set of weights that give us a smaller value of loss? Yeah, that's the whole purpose of the training component, to change those weights. At the beginning, they are random, but as we move forward, the model learn to actually find the best one. For the model that when we use transfer learning, however, that's a little bit different, yeah? For when we use transfer learning, and more specific in this case, I froze all of the feature. I think I froze let me check. I froze you have the option to freeze or not, to freeze the model or not. That's an option you have. Yeah, I froze the model, means that all of the values, all of the weights for feature extractor are exactly the same as the initial model. Remember, we don't start from scratch. We used a model that already has been trained on ImageNet. ImageNet is a data set of it's about 12 million images. So this model, this weight or filter has been learned from that. If you don't use the a pre-trained version, that would be from scratch, yeah? Here, if you don't go with weight equal to, it will be something from scratch, yeah? If you don't want to use a pre-trained version, which is if there is a pre-trained version, always a good idea to use it and not start from scratch or a complete random value. Here, the only component of model we actually learned was the classifier. Classifier weights and biases are initialized randomly in this case. And as we move forward, we learn those weights and biases. You can also, after training the model for a little while, you can unfreeze the model using the unfreeze method that I have defined, and continue to train the model or fine-tune even the feature extractor as well.
All right, thank you. Is it okay if I ask just one more question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, is that how like the explainable AI works with these kinds of models? Is that it's looking at those kernels and how they're weighting like different pixels or different sections, and then you can extract what it's actually looking for.
True. So one approach, one actually path or paradigm in explainable AI is to explore the features and see where, on which region of the image, this specific feature gets activated. So that way you can find a heat map of area of the image where those area contribute more to the activation of a specific filter. That's definitely one way to shed light on behavior of the model, but there are a lot of other things to do, and still explainable AI is a very important component, because these models are very, very complex. Yeah, we have 50 layers, but remember, in each layer you have sometimes hundreds or 1,000 filters, and they interact and contribute to each other. Because of that complexity, you get a lot of power. However, at the same time, it is unlike a simple model like linear regression, which is a very easy work to interpret them. Here is not. It's a very complex task, but at the same time, it's an interesting research area to actually work on, explainable AI. Okay. Any other question? Okay, I assume that there is no more question.
Yeah. I'd like to first of all thank you for giving such a really fascinating workshop today. And if you guys are all interested, Dr. Malaki is at our university and he teaches CPSC 599. So if you're interested in doing that in the future, that is a class that he teaches. So Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Malaki, for hosting today's workshop.
My
And
pleasure.
without further ado, I'll let everyone say their thank yous. I'm sure they enjoyed it. And hope everyone has a good night.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll end the workshop and have a good night,
Have a good
everyone.
night, everyone. Bye.